My daughter sent a voice message to her husband. But what I heard changed my $7.5 million will. In that moment, it felt as if my soul was being ripped out with bare hands. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if, for just a second, any of this feels familiar to you, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. I am Elizabeth Miller. I'm 72 years old, and I live in a solid brick house in Evanston, Illinois, just outside Chicago. A house I built, brick by brick, with my late husband, Robert, where I raised my 2 daughters, and where I thought I would grow old, surrounded by the love of my family. This Sunday morning, like every other weekend for the past 3 years, my older daughter, Jessica, came for lunch. She arrived at 2 o'clock sharp with her husband, Ryan, but without my grandson, Michael. He's with his other grandparents, she explained with that forced smile I had learned to recognize as a mask. She was wearing a camel-colored wool coat I recognized immediately, the same one I had given her for her 40th birthday, bought with 2 months of my Social Security checks. She looked elegant, impeccable, but her eyes looked at me in that way that made my stomach clench, as if I were an inconvenience, as if being here were a heavy obligation she had to fulfill. "Why does this house always smell like this, Mom?" she asked as she took off her coat and hung it on the rack in the foyer, wrinkling her nose in disgust. "Haven't you thought about airing it out more? It just feels, I don't know, so stuffy." Ryan, from the couch where he had already settled without even greeting me with a kiss, added in that studiedly casual voice of his, "Honey, it's normal in old houses. You know, the humidity, the age, these old buildings always have that smell of years." I didn't answer. I swallowed the words, fighting to escape my throat. That this house didn't smell of old age, but of the stews I had cooked for 50 years, of the flowers I grew in the backyard, of the books Robert had read aloud by the fireplace, of the life we had built with love and sacrifice. Instead, I walked to the kitchen with steps that were no longer as steady as they once were. The arthritis in my knees protested with every movement. But I had been preparing a homemade lasagna since 9 in the morning. I had gone early to a local gourmet market to buy the imported San Marzano tomatoes, the fresh mozzarella that shone like little white treasures, the authentic Parmesan Reggiano that cost more than my budget really allowed. All for them. My hands, stained with the blue veins that betray the years, trembled slightly as I served the lasagna onto the good china, the set I saved only for special occasions, which had been my mother's wedding gift half a century ago. Every layer was perfect, the cheese perfectly melted, the sauce rich and fragrant like a late summer afternoon. When I placed the plates on the dining room table, Jessica and Ryan were already deep in a conversation about their upcoming trip to Cancun. They spoke of 5-star hotels, private excursions, Michelin-starred restaurants, while I set out the wine glasses and the linen napkins I had ironed that very morning. "You know what? The agent told us we could invest in a property there," Ryan commented, cutting into the lasagna without even tasting it first. "With the Mexican real estate market on the rise, we could get a great return." "Of course, and we'd have our own place for vacations," Jessica replied, looking at her phone as she chewed. "I'm already tired of hotels. I want something that's ours." Throughout the meal, which lasted exactly 47 minutes, I counted them mentally, as I always did when they felt eternal. They never once asked how I'd been feeling since I was widowed 2 years ago. They didn't mention Robert, who had loved them like his own children. They didn't ask about my health, my sleepless nights, the infinite afternoons when the silence of this house weighed on my chest like a tombstone. They talked about investments, about the promotion Ryan was hoping for at his consulting firm, about the new car they were considering buying, a hybrid BMW that cost more than I had earned in my entire life working as a secretary at City Hall. They talked about everything except me, who was sitting right across from them, as invisible as another piece of furniture in the house. When they finished eating, leaving half the lasagna on their plates, the lasagna I had prepared with such care, Jessica got up to answer a call that had been buzzing insistently for the last few minutes. "It's important, Mom." "Excuse me a moment," she said as she walked out to the backyard, where the bougainvillea Robert had planted still bloomed in intense fuchsia tones. She left her cell phone on the table, next to my nearly empty glass of water. It was the latest iPhone, with an Italian leather case I recognized because I'd seen the price in a store downtown. $200 for a simple case. The phone vibrated. A notification lit up the screen. It was a message from Ryan. "Ha ha ha ha. I can't believe what you said. You're terrible." And below it, a forwarded voice note. "Jessica for Ryan. 1:23 minutes. My heart began to pound. I knew I shouldn't, that it was an invasion of privacy, that it was crossing a line I had no right to cross. But something in my chest, that maternal intuition developed over decades of caring and protecting, told me I needed to listen. With trembling fingers, I touched the message. My daughter's voice, the voice I had soothed during childhood nightmares, that had sung Christmas carols with me, that had whispered, "I love you, Mom," thousands of times, came out of the small speaker with a coldness that chilled me to the bone. I can't take it anymore, Ryan. Seriously. Every time I come here, I feel like I'm visiting a museum of old, musty things. This house smells like death, like it's sealed shut, like I don't know how to explain it. And her, God, she doesn't realize she's just a burden now. Look at her. She still thinks we're some happy family. She has no idea what this property is really worth. If I could put her in a home somewhere without it sounding too cruel, I would have done it ages ago. But you know how the neighbors are, always sticking their noses where they don't belong. I felt as if I'd been punched in the stomach. The air left my lungs, and I had to grab the edge of the table to keep from falling. My daughter's words kept pouring out of the phone like sharp knives. "Next week, I'm going to talk to that lawyer Andrew knows. We need to find out exactly how the will is worded. Because if we wait much longer, she's going to spend it all on nonsense and medicine. Can you imagine? $7.5 million wasted on an old woman who barely knows what day it is." The world stopped around me. $7.5 million. The estate Robert and I had built over 50 years of honest work, of scrimping and saving, of dreams fulfilled penny by penny. My daughter knew the exact value of our inheritance. The only good thing, the recording continued, is that she's getting more and more senile. The other day she asked me the same thing 3 times in 5 minutes. With a little luck, we can speed up the process. Speed up the process, as if it were an administrative task. As if my life, my dignity, my right to exist were bureaucratic hurdles to be overcome. With hands that no longer obeyed me, I placed the phone back exactly where it had been. I stood up as best I could, mumbled something about going to the bathroom, and walked down the hallway I had walked thousands of times, but which now felt strange, hostile, as if I were stepping into this house for the first time. I locked myself in the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub, where Robert and I had bathed our daughters when they were little. And there, surrounded by the blue tiles we had installed together one spring in 1985, I cried in silence, biting a towel to muffle my sobs. My own daughter, my own flesh and blood, the child I had carried in my womb for 9 months, who I had nursed at my breast, who I had rocked in my arms during feverish nights. That same person saw me as a burden, as an old thing to be gotten out of the way. And the worst part was realizing that I had been feeling it for years, but refusing to see it. That night, I couldn't close my eyes. I sat in the living room, surrounded by the photographs that had witnessed my entire life. On the mahogany chest of drawers that Robert had restored with his own hands were portraits of Jessica as a child, her first communion in that white dress that cost me 2 months' savings, her college graduation where I cried with pride as she received her business degree, her wedding at St. Anthony's Church where I myself had embroidered the flowers on her veil during the winter nights. How had it come to this? At what point had the little girl who used to hug me and say, "Mommy, when I grow up I want to be just like you," turned into this cold woman who spoke of me as if I were garbage? I remembered when Jessica was 8 and got pneumonia. For 3 weeks, I didn't leave her bedside, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, feeding her spoonful by spoonful with broths I made at home and brought in a thermos. Robert worked double shifts at the factory in Gary, Indiana, to pay for the medications our insurance didn't cover, while I stayed, singing her lullabies until she fell asleep. "Don't leave me, Mommy," she would whisper in her hoarse little voice. "I'm scared." I'll never leave you, my love, I promised, stroking her fever-dampened hair. Mommy will always be here. What an irony. In the end, she was the one who left me. I thought about when she turned 18 and wanted to go to an incredibly expensive private university. Her public high school teachers had told her she had the grades to get a scholarship to the University of Illinois, but she insisted on going to that elite school where the children of important businessmen studied. It's my future, Mom, she argued with tears in her eyes. If I don't study there, I'll never be able to get a good job. Please. It's the only chance I have. Robert and I met one night in the kitchen after she had gone to sleep. We crunched the numbers a dozen times. The tuition cost as much as our income for an entire year. We'd have to take out another mortgage on the house, Robert told me, massaging his temples the way he always did when he was worried. Or sell the car and the piece of land I inherited from my father up in Wisconsin. It's for her future, I replied, even though I knew it meant 5 more years of financial strain, 5 more years without vacations, without treats, without the peaceful retirement we had planned. We sold the land. I also sold my mother's jewelry, the pieces I had kept for 30 years waiting for the perfect moment to wear them. The pearl necklace, the white gold earrings, the dragonfly-shaped brooch that had been my grandmother's wedding gift. Jessica studied for 4 years at that university. She graduated magna cum laude and got a job immediately at a multinational corporation. At her graduation party, she thanked us in front of all her friends, hugged us, told us we were the best parents in the world. But when she started earning her own money, when she no longer needed our financial help, the visits became less frequent. Family Sundays turned into obligations to be met every other week, then once a month, then only on major holidays. And then she met Ryan Mendoza, son of a family of developers from Winnetka, a man who had never had to wonder if he could afford something, who spoke of money as one speaks of the weather, with casual ease. The first time he came to our house, he looked at our living room with that polite smile that didn't reach his eyes and commented, "How cozy. It has a lot of character." Character? That elegant word for old and cheap. From then on, Jessica began to change. She stopped eating my homemade meatballs because she was watching her figure. She stopped asking for my advice on her job because things are very different now, Mom. More complicated. She stopped telling me her problems because we don't want to burden you with our things. When they got married 6 years ago, the wedding was at a 5-star hotel on the North Shore. A celebration with 200 guests where Robert and I felt like supporting actors in a play we didn't understand. Jessica wore a $15,000 dress, more than I had spent on clothes in my entire life, and she looked radiant, perfect, unreachable. During the reception, when she approached us, I told her, "You look beautiful, honey. Your father and I are so proud." "Thanks, Mom," she replied, but she was already looking over my shoulder at the important guests waiting to greet her. And then Michael was born, my grandson, my sweet Michael, who is now 5 and has huge eyes just like Jessica had when she was little. During the first year of his life, Jessica needed me again. She would call me crying at 3 in the morning because Michael wouldn't stop crying. She would come to the house with dark circles under her eyes, asking me to help her bathe him, prepare his baby food, understand why he had a fever. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mom," she would say, as I rocked Michael and he instantly calmed down in my arms. "You're the only one who understands babies." For months, I cared for Michael as if he were my own son. I would get up at 6 in the morning to go to their house in Naperville, an hour-and-a-half journey by train and bus, spend the whole day with him while Jessica worked, and return home after dark, exhausted but happy to feel useful, needed. But as soon as Michael started to walk and talk, as soon as he was no longer a baby who needed constant care, Jessica's calls became infrequent again. She no longer needed me for late-night emergencies. She no longer came over with the child so I could entertain him while she rested. Now, Michael saw me as a stranger. The last time he came, 2 months ago, he hid behind his mother's legs when I tried to hug him. "He just doesn't see you much anymore, Mom," Jessica explained with that patient voice one uses with small children. "Kids need routine, consistency. He can't be getting used to different people all the time." Different people. His own grandmother was a different person. I got up from the sofa where I had spent the whole night reminiscing and walked to the kitchen. It was 6 in the morning, and the sun was beginning to filter through the lace curtains I had sewn myself 20 years ago. I put water on to boil for coffee, always black, because Robert used to say that sugar was an unnecessary luxury, and sat at the table where we had eaten breakfast as a family for so many years. On the table was yesterday's newspaper, folded exactly as Robert used to leave it after reading the business section that interested him so much. There was an electric bill I hadn't opened yet. $150 that seemed like a fortune after decades of rationing every expense, and a letter from the bank reminding me I had to renew some documents. But what caught my eye was a photograph that had fallen out of the album I had been leafing through during the night. It was a Christmas picture from 3 years ago, the last one we all spent together before Robert started to get sick. In the photo, there were all 5 of us. Robert and I sitting on the couch, Jessica and Ryan standing behind us, and Michael on my lap, smiling with that toothless grin of small children. Jessica had her arm around my shoulders. She was smiling at the camera naturally, without that tension I had noticed in recent months. She seemed genuinely happy to be there, with us, in our modest house with its old furniture and its walls that smelled of history. What had happened? When exactly had she started to see me as a burden? Had it been gradual, like a silent disease progressing without visible symptoms? Or had it been something specific, some moment when she decided she no longer wanted me in her life? I tried to remember the last time Jessica had made me feel loved, valued, important. Not the obligatory Sunday visits. Not the quick calls to ask if I was okay before immediately hanging up. Not the expensive birthday gifts that seemed more like a duty than a gesture of love. The last time I truly felt her affection, and I couldn't remember. The coffee had grown cold in my hands as I thought. I drank it anyway, bitter and lukewarm, like a punishment I deserved for being so naive, so blind, so willing to believe that the unconditional love I felt for my daughter was returned. Just then, the phone rang. It was 7:30 in the morning. Who could be calling so early? It was Megan, my younger daughter, from Guadalajara, Mexico, where she's lived with her husband and 2 children for 8 years. Mom? Sorry to call so early, but it's 12:30 at night here and I couldn't wait. How are you? I dreamed about you last night and woke up worried. Her warm, unpretentious voice, full of genuine concern, made me burst into tears. Megan, oh my dear girl. What's wrong, Mom? Are you okay? Did something happen? And for the first time in years, someone asked me what was wrong and actually wanted to hear the answer. I told Megan everything. Every word of the voice note, every dismissive gesture, every look of disgust I had received from Jessica in recent months. My younger daughter listened in silence, only interrupting to ask if I was sure of what I had heard. Mom, this is horrible, she finally said, and I could hear that she was crying too. How could she be so cruel? After everything you've done for her, I don't know what to do, Megan. I feel like I'm invisible in my own house. Like I'm a bother just for existing. Mom, listen to me carefully. You are not a bother to anyone. You are a dignified woman who deserves respect. And if Jessica can't see that, it's her problem, not yours. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen until the sun was fully up. For the first time in months, I felt that someone validated me, that someone understood I wasn't crazy or being dramatic. The days that followed were a terrible revelation. As if I had developed a sixth sense for detecting slights, I began to notice things I had previously overlooked, small cruelties disguised as normalcy. Jessica called on Tuesday to ask if I could watch Michael on Friday because they had an important dinner with Ryan's business partners. Her tone was mechanical, as if she were reading from a to-do list. Of course, honey, I replied automatically, as I had hundreds of times before. Perfect. I'll drop him off at 7 and pick him up after midnight. And Mom, please, no sweets before bed. You know he can't get to sleep afterwards. She didn't ask if I had plans, if I was feeling well, if I needed anything. She just told me what she needed from me and hung up. On Friday, she arrived with Michael, who now had a habit of not looking me in the eye. The boy carried a huge backpack full of expensive toys, an iPad, robots that cost over $200, remote-controlled cars that looked like collectibles. Hi, Grandma. He greeted me in a flat voice. as if he had been taught the exact words to say. "Hello, my love. Do you want to play a game?" Michael shrugged and sat on the couch with his iPad, completely absorbed in a screen that distanced him from me more effectively than any wall. Jessica didn't even come inside. She stood on the doorstep, elegant in a black dress I recognized from a window display on Michigan Avenue, one that cost over $500. "He's a little tired," she explained, checking her phone. "He's had a lot going on at school this week. Just give him the dinner that's in his backpack and put him to bed early." The dinner in the backpack. As if I didn't know how to cook for a child. As if the meatballs and mac and cheese I had made thousands of times for her when she was little were now inadequate for her son. That night, while Michael mechanically ate the industrial chicken nuggets Jessica had brought, I tried to talk to him. "How was school, sweetie? Made any new friends?" "Yeah," he replied without looking up from his plate. "And what do you like most about school?" "I don't know. Do you remember when you were little and we used to play cards here in the kitchen?" Michael looked at me for the first time with something resembling interest, but then immediately looked away, as if he'd been taught not to show affection toward me. "Mom says you're very old and you forget things," he mumbled, spearing a nugget with his fork. I felt as if I had been slapped. Jessica had said that to him? She had told her own son that his grandmother was senile, that she couldn't be trusted. And what do you think, Michael? Do you think I forget things? The boy shrugged again, uncomfortable, as if I were asking him a question too complicated for his age. When Jessica returned at 12:30, she smelled of expensive perfume and wine. Her cheeks were flushed and her eyes bright, the look of someone who had spent a pleasant evening surrounded by important people. "How did he behave?" she asked, gathering Michael's things as he slept on the sofa. "Very well, as always." "Perfect. Well, Mom, we're off. Michael has soccer early tomorrow." She didn't thank me. She didn't ask how my evening had been. She didn't notice that I had cleaned the whole house, prepared Michael's favorite snack, though he hadn't touched it, and had even ironed the clothes in his backpack. She simply picked up her sleeping son, muttered a "see you later" without looking at me, and left. I stood at the door, watching her car drive down the empty street. A metallic gray BMW that shone under the streetlights like a promise of a life I would never have. The next day was my birthday. I was turning 73. I waited all morning for a call, a text, something to indicate that Jessica remembered. I made a special coffee, put on the blue dress Robert always said suited me, and carefully combed my hair, as if getting ready could change anything, as if being presentable would make my daughter remember that I had come into the world on October 15th, 73 years ago. At 2 in the afternoon, I received a text message. "Happy birthday, Mom. Have a great day." An emoji. My life had been reduced to an emoji sent from a cell phone. Megan called from Mexico at 5 o'clock, 11 in the morning her time, and sang happy birthday over the phone. Her children, my grandchildren whom I barely knew from sporadic video calls, yelled, "Happy birthday, Grandma," in the background. They sent me pictures of a cake they had made for me, even though we were separated by an ocean. "Mom, we're coming to visit next year," Megan promised. "We've already saved up for the tickets. The kids want to see Chicago and I need to hug you." I cried for 20 minutes after hanging up, not from sadness, but from a confusing mix of gratitude and pain. Gratitude for having at least one daughter who loved me. Pain because the other treated me like an annoying stranger. That night, as I ate a can of soup for dinner, because cooking for one seemed like a disproportionate effort, the doorbell rang. It was 9:30. Who could it be so late? It was Jessica. In her hands was a cake from an expensive downtown bakery, the price tag still on it. $35. "Sorry I'm so late, Mom. I completely forgot it was your birthday. We've been swamped with some work thing for Ryan. But, well, here I am. I completely forgot." The words echoed in my head like distant church bells. "Thank you, dear," I managed to say as she placed the cake on the kitchen table without even taking off her coat. "Did you have a good day?" she asked, but she was already looking at her watch, calculating how long she had to stay to fulfill the minimum protocol of filial courtesy. "Yes, a quiet one. Glad to hear it. Well, I can't stay long because I have an early morning, but I wanted to stop by for a minute." She cut a piece of cake, an industrial chocolate cake that tasted like sweetened cardboard, and sat with me at the table where I had celebrated all my birthdays since I married Robert. "So how's everything?" she asked, chewing mechanically. "Fine, honey. Everything's fine." "Good. Hey, Mom, one thing. We're going to need you to help out with Michael next weekend. We have a very important wedding in the Hamptons and we can't take him." A very important wedding. She wasn't asking for a favor, she was informing me of a decision already made. "Of course," I replied, as always. She finished her piece of cake in silence, constantly checking her phone. Then she stood up, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, a cold, perfunctory touch, and headed for the door. "Thanks for the cake," I said as I walked her out. "Don't mention it, Mom. Take care." And she left, leaving me alone with an expensive cake I didn't like, and the absolute certainty that to my older daughter, I was just an obligation to be fulfilled from time to time to keep up appearances. That night, after throwing 3/4 of the cake in the trash, I sat in the living room and asked myself a question I had been avoiding for months. When was the last time Jessica truly needed me? Not as a free babysitter or a solution to her problems, but simply as her mother. And I realized I couldn't remember. A week after my birthday episode, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. Call Jessica without it being to offer her something, just to talk, like normal mothers and daughters did. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I knew that at that hour she would have left the office but wouldn't have picked up Michael from school yet. I dialed her number with trembling fingers, mentally rehearsing what I was going to say. The phone rang 5 times before she answered. "Yeah?" Her voice sounded impatient, as if I had interrupted something important. "Hi, Jessica. It's Mom." "Oh, hi, Mom. Is something wrong?" "I'm a little busy right now." "No, nothing's wrong. I just wanted, well, I wanted to know how you are. We haven't talked in a few days." An awkward silence stretched over the phone line. I could hear the background traffic noise, the sound of her heels on the pavement as she walked. "I'm fine, Mom. Everything's normal." "Hey, is this urgent? Because I have to pick up Michael and then I have a meeting." "No, it's not urgent. Just, how is Michael? How's school?" "Fine, Mom. Everything's fine. Look, I'll call you later, okay? I really can't talk right now." And she hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, listening to the dial tone, feeling something tighten inside my chest. It hadn't even lasted 2 minutes. My own daughter couldn't spare 2 minutes of her life for a normal conversation. But the worst was yet to come. That Friday, I received an unexpected call from Dr. Hernandez, my primary care physician, an older man, about 60, who had been my doctor for over a decade and knew my complete medical history. "Mrs. Miller, I need to see you urgently," he said in a serious voice. "The results from the tests we did last week. There's something we need to discuss." My heart leaped. The routine tests I did every year, the same as always. What could be wrong? "Is it serious, doctor?" "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I have an opening at 10. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake imagining the worst-case scenarios, remembering how Robert's illness had begun, with seemingly routine tests that revealed something terrible that changed our lives forever. At 10 o'clock sharp on Saturday, I was sitting in Dr. Hernandez's office, my hands sweating and my stomach in knots. "Elizabeth," he said, using my first name as he always did when the news was serious. "I have to tell you we've found some irregularities in your tests. Nothing alarming yet, but it is concerning. Your blood sugar level is very high, and there are signs you might be developing type 2 diabetes. Diabetes, my mother's disease, which had caused her to partially lose her sight in her final years." "What does that mean, doctor?" "It means we're going to have to make some significant lifestyle changes. A strict diet, regular exercise, daily medication, and most importantly, you're going to need family support. This disease is much better managed when you're not living alone." Family support. The words echoed in my head with bitter irony. Is it serious? If you take good care of yourself, you can live a completely normal life, but you need constant medical supervision, and above all, you can't neglect your meals or your schedule. It's crucial that someone is looking out for you. I left the office with a bag full of prescriptions and informational pamphlets, and an urgent need to tell someone what had just happened to me. My first instinct was to call Jessica. I dialed her number as I walked down the street toward the bus stop, trying to organize in my mind how I would explain the situation. Mom? What is it now? Jessica, I need to tell you something important. I just came from the doctor and… Oh, Mom, really now? I'm in the middle of a brunch with Michael's school parents. Can it wait? It's just that the doctor says I have diabetes and… Okay. Look, tell me everything later, all right? It's really not a good time. And she hung up again. I stood frozen in the middle of the sidewalk, people rushing past me, holding the phone as if it were a strange object I didn't know how to use. I had just received a life-changing diagnosis, and my daughter didn't have 30 seconds to listen to me. I called Megan. Mom, what a nice surprise. How are you? I told her everything. The diagnosis, the medications, the doctor's recommendations, my fear of facing this alone. Megan listened in silence, asking questions, showing genuine concern. Mom, this is completely manageable, she reassured me in a loving voice. My mother-in-law has had diabetes for 10 years, and she's doing great. But you're right. You can't be alone with this. Does Jessica know yet? I tried to tell her, but she was busy. A silence heavy with meaning passed between us. You know what, Mom? I think it's time you had a serious conversation with your older daughter. That night, I decided Megan was right. The next day, Sunday, was one of Jessica's scheduled bi-weekly visits. This time, I was going to tell her exactly what I thought. I was going to demand the respect I deserved as her mother. But when Sunday came, Jessica didn't show up. At 2:30 in the afternoon, after I had already prepared lunch and set the table, I received a text message. Mom, we won't be able to make it today. Something important came up. See you next time. Something important. More important than visiting her mother the day after she received a medical diagnosis. I sat in the kitchen, surrounded by the food I had painstakingly prepared. Roast chicken with potatoes, Jessica's favorite dish when she was a child, and I felt something inside me break for good. It wasn't sadness or disappointment. It was something deeper, more final. It was the crystal-clear understanding that I had been living a fantasy, deluding myself about the kind of relationship I had with my daughter. Jessica didn't love me. She might have loved me once when she was little and needed me, but now I was just an annoying obligation in her perfect life. That afternoon, I did something I had never done before. I Googled, how to know if your adult child is using you. What I read chilled me to the bone. All the signs were there. The visits only when she needed something. The lack of genuine interest in my well-being. The way she made me feel guilty when I couldn't meet her demands. The expensive gifts with no emotional meaning. The way she spoke of me as if I were a burden. There was one particularly harsh article about emotional abuse of the elderly by family members. Every paragraph seemed to describe my situation exactly. Emotional abuse includes systematically ignoring the elder's emotional needs, treating them with contempt or condescension, isolating them from loved ones, or using emotional manipulation to obtain financial or material benefits. Financial benefits. Suddenly, I remembered all the times Jessica had made seemingly casual comments about my house, about the property value, about what would happen when you're no longer here. I remembered the voice note I had accidentally heard, where she talked about the $7.5 million as if it were already hers. I closed the laptop and went to bed, but not to sleep. I went to make a decision I had been putting off for months, maybe years. The next day, I was going to do something I never thought I'd have to do. I was going to defend myself from my own daughter. But first, I needed to find out exactly what was behind her behavior. I needed to know if she was really planning something more than just waiting for me to die to inherit. On Monday morning, I called the bank where Robert and I had kept our accounts for 30 years. I asked to speak with the manager, Meredith Vance, a woman my age who knew our entire financial situation. Good morning, Meredith. This is Elizabeth Miller, Robert Miller's widow. Elizabeth, how are you? We haven't seen you in a while. I'm fine, Meredith. Thank you. Look, I'm calling because I need you to inform me of any unusual activity on our accounts. Any inquiries, any access attempts, anything that might seem strange to you. A brief silence. Has something happened, Elizabeth? Are you all right? Let's just say I have reason to be concerned about the security of my assets. I understand. Let me check your history. Indeed, we have had some phone inquiries in recent weeks. Someone asking about the status of your accounts. About procedures for large transfers. About matters concerning your will. My breath caught. Who was asking? A woman who identified herself as your daughter, Jessica Miller. She said you had authorized her to make inquiries over the phone because you could no longer easily get to the bank. My own daughter had lied to get information about my money. She had used my supposed frailty as an excuse to spy on my bank accounts. Meredith, I said, my voice trembling, I never authorized anyone to make inquiries about my accounts, and I get around just fine. Oh my God. Elizabeth, this is very serious. I'll have to activate our security protocols immediately. Can you come to the bank today? We need to change all your access codes and review any authorizations that might be in your name. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. It wasn't just emotional contempt. It wasn't just that she saw me as a burden. Jessica was trying to steal from me. That same afternoon, I went to the bank like a woman possessed. Meredith received me in her private office, a glass-walled space where so many important moments of my life had taken place. Signing the mortgage for the house, opening the savings accounts for the girls, handling the paperwork after Robert's death. Elizabeth, please sit down, Meredith said with a grave expression. I've been reviewing the entire history, and the situation is more serious than I thought. She placed a folder full of documents in front of me. Phone logs, online inquiries, attempts to access confidential information. Your daughter has called 6 times in the last month, she explained, pointing to the dates on a sheet. She has asked about the balance of your accounts, about your mutual fund investments, about the procedure for making large transfers. She also tried to find out if you have a safe deposit box here at the bank. 6 times. In 1 month, while she was hanging up on me when I tried to tell her I had diabetes. But the most worrying part, Meredith continued, is that in the last call 3 days ago, she specifically asked about your will documents. She wanted to know if we had a copy and what the procedure would be in case of, well, in case you could no longer manage your own affairs. My stomach turned. Jessica wasn't just spying on my money. She was actively planning for my future as if I were already dead or incapacitated. Meredith, I want to change all my access codes immediately. I want it prohibited for any information about my accounts to be given to anyone, including my daughter. And I want to know exactly what my options are to protect my assets. Of course, Elizabeth, but there's something else you should know. We've detected that someone has been trying to access your online banking. The failed attempts are automatically logged in our system. She showed me a computer screen with multiple access attempts using incorrect passwords. The attempts had started 2 months ago, always during business hours, always from the same IP address. Can you find out where these attempts were made from? Meredith typed something into her computer. The IP address corresponds to a financial consulting firm in Naperville, where Ryan worked, where he and Jessica lived. Elizabeth, Meredith said, leaning forward, I think you should speak with a lawyer. What you're telling me could constitute attempted fraud or misappropriation. I left the bank with all my codes changed and an appointment for the next day with a lawyer specializing in family law. But most importantly, I left with a mental clarity I hadn't had in months. For the first time in years, I felt furious. Not sad, not disappointed, not confused. Furious. And fury, I discovered, was much, much better than self-pity. That night, when Jessica called me at 10:30 as if nothing had happened, I was ready. Hi, Mom. How was your day? Her voice sounded normal, casual, as if she hadn't just tried to steal my life savings. Very interesting, Jessica, I replied with a calmness that surprised even me. I was at the bank. A brief silence. Almost imperceptible, but I noticed it. Oh, really? Everything okay with the accounts? Very okay. In fact, I made some security changes that I think were for the best. Another silence. This one longer. Hey, Mom, by the way, next weekend we need you to watch Michael. You know, Ryan has that conference in San Francisco and I have to go with him. And there it was. The automatic request, the assumption that I would be available, the complete lack of consideration for my own plans or feelings. But for the first time in my adult life, I said something I had never said before. No. The silence stretched on for so long, I thought the call had dropped. What do you mean, no, Mom? I mean, I can't watch Michael this weekend. Why not? Do you have plans? Yes, Jessica. I have plans. It was a lie. I had no plans except to stay home, watch television, and read the pamphlets on diabetes the doctor had given me. But for the first time, I realized that those were valid plans too. That not being available to be used was also a valid plan. What plans do you have? Her voice had changed. It was no longer casual. It had taken on that slightly aggressive tone she used when things didn't go her way. Personal plans, Jessica. Mom, this is very important for us. Ryan's conference could mean a huge promotion. Can't you change whatever you have going on? No. The word came out of my mouth with a firmness I didn't know I possessed. It was as if I had discovered a muscle I never knew I had, and was now using it for the first time. I don't know what's gotten into you lately, Mom. You're acting so weird. Weird for saying I can't be your free babysitter? It's not being a free babysitter. It's taking care of your grandson. It's exactly the same thing, Jessica, and the answer is no. I hung up the phone before she could reply. I sat in the kitchen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Power. It was a strange, almost intoxicating feeling. After decades of always saying yes, of always being available, of putting others' needs before my own, I had said no, and the world hadn't ended. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was Ryan. Elizabeth. Hi. It's Ryan. Jessica told me you can't watch Michael this weekend. His voice had that forced cordiality he had used with me since they were married, as if he were speaking to an employee he had to keep happy. That's right, Ryan. Look, Elizabeth, I understand you might have your own things going on, but this is really important for us. My boss is going to be at that conference. There's a real chance of a promotion. And that's your problem, not mine. The words flew out of my mouth before I could think. For 6 years, I had put up with Ryan's condescension, with his way of treating me like a trusted servant. No more. Elizabeth, are you feeling all right? It's not like you to be so uncooperative, as if my function in life were to cooperate with his plans. I feel perfectly fine, Ryan. I've simply decided that my time has value too. Of course it has value. No one ever said it didn't. Oh, really? And what is that value? When was the last time you paid me for watching Michael? When was the last time you asked me if the date worked for me before informing me that you needed my services? Another awkward silence. Elizabeth, we're family. Families don't charge for helping each other. You're right, Ryan. Families don't charge, but they also don't spy on their parents' bank accounts, do they? The silence this time was absolute. I could hear his breathing through the phone. I don't know what you're talking about, Elizabeth. I'm sure you don't. Give my regards to Jessica. And I hung up again. That night, I slept better than I had in months. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for not meeting others' expectations. I didn't feel selfish for thinking of myself first. The next day, I went to see the lawyer Meredith had recommended. His name was Charles Davis, a man in his 50s with graying hair and a calm way of speaking that immediately inspired my trust. I told him everything. The voice note I had overheard, the attempts to access my bank accounts, the constant calls to the bank, the way Jessica treated me, the feeling of being used only as a babysitter and an ATM. Charles listened in silence, taking occasional notes, without judging or interrupting. Elizabeth, he said when I finished, what you're telling me is very serious. Your daughter could be committing several crimes: attempted fraud, unauthorized access to financial information, possibly identity theft by misrepresenting herself to get information from the bank. And what can I do? Several things. We can file a report for these fraud attempts. We can completely restructure your will to protect your assets. And we can establish preventative legal measures to stop anyone from taking advantage of you in the future. And if I want to cut her out of the inheritance completely? Charles looked at me seriously. That is your decision, Elizabeth. It's your money and your right to decide what to do with it. But I recommend you take some time to think it over. Decisions made in the heat of the moment sometimes lead to later regret. I've been thinking about it for years without even knowing it, I replied. I think the time has come to make a decision with a clear head. When I left Charles's office, I carried in my purse the paperwork to completely change my will and an appointment for the following week to sign the new documents. But the most important thing I carried was the certainty that, for the first time in my adult life, I was putting my own needs before anyone else's, and it felt like being reborn. Over the next 3 days, Jessica called me 6 times. I didn't answer any of them. I also received 4 text messages, each more desperate than the last. "Mom, why aren't you picking up the phone? Mom, I'm worried. Are you okay? Ryan said you were weird on the phone with him. Did something happen? Mom, please, call me. We need to talk." But I wasn't ready to talk yet. I was using those days for something I had never done before, planning my own life without considering the needs of others. On Wednesday afternoon, when I returned from signing the new will documents at Charles's office, I found Jessica waiting for me at my front door. She was leaning against her gray BMW, arms crossed, with an expression I hadn't seen since she was a teenager, and I had grounded her for coming home late. "Hi, Mom," she said in a tense voice. "Since you're not answering your phone, I came to see what's wrong." "Hello, Jessica. Didn't you have work today? I left early to come see you. I'm worried about you." I opened the front door and walked in, followed by her. For the first time, I didn't worry about whether the house was tidy or if I had something to offer her. I simply sat down in my favorite armchair, the green velvet one Robert had picked out for me 15 years ago, and looked at her in silence. Jessica remained standing in the middle of the living room, uncomfortable, as if she wasn't quite sure how to behave when I wasn't immediately rushing to attend to her. "Mom? What's wrong? Ryan said you were very strange on the phone." "Strange in what way?" "Well, I don't know. Uncooperative. Like you were angry about something." There was that word again. Cooperative. As if my purpose was to cooperate with her plans. "Sit down, Jessica." She obeyed, but perched on the edge of the sofa, as if ready to bolt at any moment. "We need to talk," I said with a calmness that surprised me. "Okay, Mom. That's what this is about. Tell me what's wrong. What do you think is wrong?" "I don't know. That's why I'm here." I stared at her for a few seconds. My daughter, my firstborn, whom I had brought into the world after 18 hours of labor, whom I had nursed through the first months of her life, waking up every 2 hours, whom I had cared for through flus and measles and nightmares. "You really don't know, Jessica?" She frowned, as if making a real effort to understand. "Is it because I couldn't come last Sunday?" "Mom, I already told you something important came up." "It's not about Sunday, Jessica." "Then what is it about?" "It's about everything. About the last few years. About the way you treat me." "What do you mean I treat you badly? I come to see you every other week. I call you. You call me when you need something. You come over when you need me to watch Michael." "That's not true." "Oh, really? Tell me the last time you came over just to see me. The last time you called just to ask how I am without needing anything in return." Jessica opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. "Did you know I have diabetes?" "What?" "I have diabetes. I was diagnosed last week. I tried to tell you, but you were too busy to listen." Jessica's expression changed. For a moment, I saw a flash of the little girl she had been, worried and scared. "Mom, I didn't know. Is it serious?" "I don't know, Jessica, because I haven't had anyone to talk to about it. But why didn't you insist? If I had known..." "If you had known what? That your mother had a health problem? Don't you think that's exactly the kind of thing a daughter should be interested in without having to be pushed?" Jessica ran her hands through her hair, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "You're right, Mom. I'm sorry. I've just been so swamped with work lately and..." "It's not just lately, Jessica. It's been for years." "What do you mean?" "I mean that for a long time I've felt like I'm only useful when you need something. When you need a babysitter. When you need financial help. When you need a favor. But when it's just about being your mother, about you treating me like a person who deserves respect and affection, you're not there. Mom, that's not fair." "Not fair? Do you know what's not fair? That my own daughter has been calling the bank to find out how much money I have." Jessica froze. All the color drained from her face. What? 6 calls in the last month, Jessica, asking about my accounts, my investments, my will. There were also attempts to access my online banking from your office. Mom, I can explain?" "Then explain." Jessica stood up, pacing nervously around the living room like a caged animal. "Ryan and we were worried about you. We thought that maybe you couldn't manage your finances alone anymore, that someone might take advantage of you." "Someone like who?" "I don't know. Telemarketers, scammers. And you decided to protect me by spying on me?" "It wasn't spying. It was looking out for you." "Looking out for me?" I repeated the words as if they were poison. "Like when you said you wanted to put me in a home somewhere because I was a burden?" Jessica stopped dead in her tracks. This time, the blood didn't just drain from her face. I think it drained from her entire body. "How?" "I heard the voice note you sent to Ryan." "What voice note?" "The one where you said my house smells like death, that I don't realize I'm a burden, that if you could put me in a home you would have already done it. The one where you talked about $7.5 million as if it were already yours." Jessica collapsed onto the sofa as if the strings holding her up had been cut. "Mom, You what? You're sorry? You didn't really mean it?" "I was angry that day. I'd had a bad day at work. I wasn't serious." "Oh, really? And the calls to the bank weren't serious either? And the attempts to access my money weren't serious?" Jessica started to cry. Big, dramatic tears, like when she was a child and knew she was in serious trouble. "Mom, please. It's true we were worried about money. Ryan lost a lot on some investments last year. We're going through a tough time financially. And that makes me your solution?" "No. Well, we thought that when you're gone, that money, when I'm gone? I mean, in the distant future." "Jessica, I'm 73, not 93. Are you honestly waiting for me to die soon to solve your financial problems?" "That's not it." "Then what is it?" Jessica cried for 5 full minutes. I watched her without saying a word, without getting up to comfort her as I had automatically done for the 42 years of her life. When she finally stopped crying, she looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "What's going to happen now, Mom?" "Now, we're going to establish some new rules." "What kind of rules?" "First, you will never call the bank asking about my affairs again. If you need to know something about my money, you ask me directly." "Okay." "Second, when you call me, it will be because you want to talk to me, not because you need something." "Okay." "Third, when you come to visit, it will be because you want to spend time with me, not because you need a babysitter." "Okay, Mom. Whatever you say." "And fourth, if I ever again hear you speak of me as if I'm a burden, as if you're just waiting for me to die, or as if my only function is to leave you money when I'm gone, everything between us is over." "And what do you mean, everything is over?" "I mean, I will disinherit you completely, and I will not speak another word to you as long as I live." Jessica looked at me with genuine horror. "Mom, you can't be serious." "Want to bet?" I stood up from my armchair and went to the desk where I keep my important documents. I took out a new folder, the one I had brought home that afternoon from Charles's office. "I changed my will this morning, Jessica. Your sister Megan now inherits 80% of everything I own. The other 20% is going to a foundation that helps elderly victims of family abuse. And me? You inherit this conversation, and the opportunity to decide if you want to be my daughter for real or continue being a stranger who visits when she needs something." Jessica looked at me as if she didn't know me. "You're not the same person, Mom." "You're right," I answered. "I'm no longer the woman who accepts crumbs of affection and mistakes them for love. I'm no longer the mother who believes that giving everything without receiving anything in return is what a good mother is supposed to do. And what are you now? I am a 73-year-old woman who has decided to live the rest of her life with dignity." Jessica got up to leave, but stopped at the door. "Is there any chance you'll change your mind about the will?" "Yes," I replied. "Prove to me over the next year that you love me for who I am, not for what I have. Prove to me that I'm your mother, not your ATM. Prove to me that you respect me, not just tolerate me. And if I succeed?" "If you succeed, the inheritance will be split evenly between you and Megan. And if I don't?" "If you don't, Megan gets everything, and you will have to live with the knowledge that you lost your mother to greed." Jessica left without saying goodbye. From the window, I watched her get into her BMW and speed down the street. I stood in my living room, surrounded by the silence of my house, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. The first few days after my conversation with Jessica were strange. It was as if I had been living underwater for years and could suddenly breathe fresh air. I woke up in the mornings without that heavy feeling in my chest that I had been carrying without realizing it. That Friday, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I went to a local flea market by myself. Robert used to say that flea markets were for tourists and time wasters, so in 50 years of marriage, I had never gone. But Robert was gone now, and I could decide for myself what was a waste of time and what wasn't. I walked among the stalls of antiques and old books, stopping whenever something caught my eye, with no rush, no schedule to keep, no one waiting for me at home. I bought a blue beaded necklace I liked simply because I liked it, not because it was practical or cheap, or because it matched something I already owned. At a bookstall, I found a novel by Alice Walker I had always wanted to read but never had the time for. The Color Purple. The vendor, an older man with a white beard and kind eyes, smiled when I showed it to him. "Excellent choice, ma'am. That novel changed my life when I first read it." "How so?" I asked, genuinely curious. "It taught me that a woman can find her voice no matter how late in life, and that it's never too late to start a new life." I bought the book and went to a small cafe downtown that had tables on the patio. I ordered a latte and avocado toast, sat in the October sun, and opened the book to the first page. For the first time in years, no one knew where I was. No one expected anything from me. No one needed me for anything. And instead of feeling abandoned, I felt liberated. I read for 2 hours, lost in the story of Celie and her ability to create her own inner world when the outer world became hostile. When I looked up, I realized I had been smiling without knowing it. That afternoon, when I got home, I called Megan. "Mom, how are you? Did you talk to Jessica?" "Yes, I talked to her." "And how did it go?" "It was liberating." I told her the whole conversation, leaving out no details. Megan listened in silence, occasionally murmuring expressions of disbelief or outrage. "Mom, I can't believe Jessica did all that. It's horrible. The important thing is that it's settled now. I've given her a chance to change, but the rules of the game have completely changed." "And how do you feel?" "Like I've been carrying a backpack full of rocks for years, and I finally realized I could take it off." "I'm so happy to hear you talk like that, Mom. You sound different, stronger." "I feel different, honey. Like I've gotten back a part of myself I'd lost without even noticing." "So what are you going to do now?" "Live my life, Megan. For the first time in decades, I'm going to live my own life." And that's exactly what I did. The following week, I signed up for water aerobics classes at the local community center. I had always wanted to exercise in the water, but Robert considered public pools unhygienic, and Jessica had once told me that older women in swimsuits looked ridiculous. Well, it turns out older women in swimsuits didn't look ridiculous at all. We looked like women who had decided to take care of their health and have fun doing it. The group was made up of 8 women between 65 and 78, all with stories similar to mine. Widows, divorcees, or women whose children no longer needed them and who had decided to do something for themselves. The instructor was named Carmen, a woman in her 50s with an infectious energy that made us laugh while she made us sweat. "Ladies, the water doesn't have an age," she would tell us as she taught us moves we thought were impossible for our bodies. "And neither do you." After class, we would usually go for coffee at the center's cafe. It was the first time in my life I had a group of friends who weren't connected to my husband, my daughters, or my job. They were my friends, chosen by me because I enjoyed their company. One of them, Patricia, had gone through a similar experience with her oldest son. "It took me 3 years to realize he was using me as a bank and a babysitter," she told me one day over coffee. "When I finally said enough, he accused me of being a bad mother. Can you believe it? And what did you do?" I told him I'd rather be a bad mother who was free than a good mother who was a slave. We get along much better now. It turns out that when I stopped being available all the time, he started to value the time we did spend together. Her words gave me hope. Maybe my situation with Jessica wasn't lost forever. I also started to update the house. Not a complete renovation, but small changes that made it feel more like mine and less like a museum of my past life. I changed the living room curtains to lighter ones that let in more sun. I bought new plants to fill the empty spaces left by Robert's absence and Jessica's emotional distance. I moved the furniture to create a reading nook by the window overlooking the yard. In that nook, I put Robert's green velvet armchair, a small table for my coffee, a floor lamp I bought at a thrift store, and a low bookshelf where I placed the books I was starting to read. It was my space, designed entirely to my taste, without having to consult anyone or worry if a visitor would like it. One afternoon in November, while reading in my new nook, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Miller? This is Meredith Vance from the bank." "Hello, Meredith. Is something wrong? I wanted to let you know that your daughter tried to access information about your accounts again yesterday. This time she came to our branch in person." My heart sank. After everything we had talked about, Jessica was still trying to spy on my money. And what happened? The staff followed the protocol we established. They told her she needed written and notarized authorization from you for any inquiries. She became very agitated and demanded to speak with me, but I wasn't in. She eventually left without getting anything, but I thought you should know. Thank you for calling me, Meredith. Elizabeth, are you all right? I know these family situations can be very painful. I'm fine, Meredith. Better than I've been in years, in fact. I'm glad to hear you say that. If you need anything, you know you can count on me. After I hung up, I sat and thought. A part of me felt betrayed all over again. After our conversation, after Jessica's tears and her promises to change, she was still trying to access my money behind my back. But another part of me, the new part that had been growing in recent weeks, simply felt confirmed in its decisions. I had done the right thing by changing the will. I had done the right thing by setting boundaries. I had done the right thing by protecting myself. That night, instead of staying awake stewing over it, I poured myself a glass of red wine, something I had never done alone, put on some Nat King Cole on the sound system Robert had bought years ago, but I had barely used, and settled in to finish reading The Color Purple. When I reached the end of the novel, with Sally's final letters, I cried. But not from sadness, but from something I couldn't name. It was as if I had found something I had lost long ago, the capacity to be moved by beauty, to enjoy moments that were entirely my own. The following Sunday, for the first time in 3 years, I didn't wait for Jessica's visit. I didn't prepare a special lunch. I didn't clean the house from top to bottom. I didn't get nervous thinking about whether everything would be perfect for her. Instead, I went to Lincoln Park with my new book. I'd bought another Alice Walker novel and sat on a bench near the lagoon to read and watch the families with their children, the young couples, the other retirees like me, who had discovered that Sundays could be for themselves. Around 3 in the afternoon, I received a text from Jessica. "Are you home? I wanted to stop by." I replied, "I'm not home. I'm busy." "With what?" "With my life, Jessica." There was no response. That night, as I ate a salad I had prepared just for myself, with ingredients that I liked, I thought about how different loneliness felt now. During the first few months after Robert's death, loneliness had been like an open wound, painful and constant. Later, with Jessica's behavior, it had become a heavy sadness that followed me everywhere. But now, this solitude felt like elegance, like the peace of not having to answer to anyone, of not having to adapt my tastes to others, of being able to be completely authentic without fear of judgment or rejection. For the first time in my adult life, being alone felt like being whole. 6 months after that life-changing conversation, I'm sitting on the patio of a small cafe in Wicker Park, waiting for Megan. She came to visit from Mexico, just as she promised, and in a few hours, we're leaving together for a trip to Charleston. It will be my first trip in decades that I'm taking because I want to, not because someone else planned it or needs me to accompany them. My younger daughter arrives in a rush, with that vibrant energy that has always defined her. She looks older, with a few gray hairs I didn't see the last time, but her eyes are the same, warm, genuine, full of unconditional love. "Mom." She hugs me as if we haven't seen each other in years, even though we talk on the phone every week. "How are you? You look, I don't know, different, radiant." "I feel different," I reply as we order coffee. "I feel like I've finally learned how to be myself." "And what's that like?" "It's liberating, Megan. It's like my whole life I was playing the part of what I thought I should be. The perfect wife, the sacrificial mother, the woman who always puts others first. and I suddenly realized I could write my own script. Megan smiles, but I see concern in her eyes. And Jessica? Have you heard from her? Over these 6 months, my interactions with my older daughter have been sporadic and tense. She called me twice in December. Brief, forced conversations where she tried to return to normal without truly acknowledging what she had done. In January, she came to visit with Michael one afternoon, but it was clear she was there out of obligation, not a genuine desire to spend time with me. I received a letter from her last week, I tell Megan. A handwritten 3-page letter. And what did it say? A lot of things. That she had reflected on her behavior, that she understood why I was angry, that she wanted to try to rebuild our relationship. She also told me that she and Ryan are in couples therapy because they're having financial problems and it was affecting their marriage. And what did you write back? I haven't responded yet, but I think I will when I get back from Charleston. I explained to Megan that during these months, I've been reflecting on forgiveness, on second chances, on what it means to be a mother when your children are adults. I've come to some important conclusions. You know what I've learned, honey? That forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and giving second chances doesn't mean returning to the same toxic dynamics as before. What do you mean? I mean that if Jessica really wants to rebuild our relationship, she's going to have to do it on my terms. As equals. As two adults who respect each other. Not as a mother and daughter where one gives everything and the other only takes. Over coffee, I tell Megan about my new life, about Carmen and the water aerobics classes, about Patricia and our chats after exercise, about the books I've been reading, about the changes I've made to the house. Last month I adopted a cat, I say, smiling. Really? Didn't Dad hate cats? Yes, he hated them. He said they were treacherous and independent animals. I laugh at the memory. But it turns out those are exactly the qualities I appreciate most now. His name is Neruda. Like the poet? Like the poet. He's an 8-year-old gray cat who had been at the shelter for months because people prefer to adopt kittens. But Neruda and I understand each other. We both know what it's like to be underestimated because of our age. Megan laughs, but then gets serious. Mom, there's something I have to tell you about the will. Go on. I don't want to inherit all the money if Jessica doesn't change. It doesn't feel right. Why not? Because I didn't do anything special to deserve it except be far away. If I had lived here, maybe I would have fallen into the temptation of taking advantage of you too. Her honesty moves me, but it also confirms I made the right decisions. Megan, listen to me. The money isn't a prize for being a good daughter. It's my money, which I will leave to the people I believe will use it wisely and who have treated me with respect during my life. You call me every week, not because you need something, but because you care about me. You plan to visit with your kids, not because you want something from me, but because you want your children to know their grandmother. That's the difference. And if Jessica really changes? If Jessica really changes, over a period long enough for me to see that it's a genuine change and not a strategy, then we will amend the will. But the change has to be real, consistent, and without expectation of a reward. After coffee, we walk through the streets of Wicker Park toward my house. It's an area I never explored when I was married. Robert considered it too bohemian and noisy, but I love it now for its creative energy and relaxed atmosphere. Do you know what I like most about my new life? I ask Megan as we stop in front of a small bookstore window. Tell me. That every day is mine. Every decision I make is because I want to make it, not because someone else needs or expects it. It's the first time in my life I feel like I'm living my own existence instead of existing to facilitate the lives of others. At home, while Megan plays with Neruda and I finish packing my suitcase for our trip, the phone rings. It's Jessica. Hi, Mom. I heard Megan is there. Can I stop by to say hello to her? It's the first time in months her voice doesn't sound demanding or manipulative. It sounds vulnerable, almost timid. Of course, Jessica. You're welcome. Megan looks at me with surprise, but I nod. An important part of my personal growth has been learning that I can be strong without being cruel, that I can have boundaries without being vengeful. Jessica arrives an hour later. She looks different, thinner with dark circles under her eyes, as if she's been going through real hardship. She brings flowers, but not the expensive, soulless flowers she used to bring. They're yellow chrysanthemums from a neighborhood florist, simple but chosen with care. "Hi, Megan," she greets her sister with a genuine hug. "How are the kids?" For the first few minutes, the conversation is normal, even natural. The sisters catch up on their lives. Jessica asks about Mexico. Megan asks about Michael. I listen from the kitchen as I make tea, watching them interact without the tension that had characterized our family gatherings for the last few years. After Megan and Jessica have chatted for a bit, my older daughter looks me directly in the eye. "Mom, can we talk for a moment alone?" Megan excuses herself and goes out to the patio with Neruda. Jessica and I sit in the living room, but this time there isn't the feeling of confrontation that our last meeting had. "I want to apologize," she says simply. "Not for what I did, but for who I had become with you." Explain the difference. What I did were specific actions. Spying on your accounts, speaking ill of you, treating you like an obligation. That was wrong, and I'm sorry. But who I had become was worse. I had become a person capable of treating her own mother that way. And that brings me more shame than any specific thing I did. Her words surprise me with their maturity. For 6 months, I had been expecting excuses, justifications, attempts to minimize her behavior. This is different. What's changed, Jessica? A lot of things. Therapy has helped me understand that I was projecting my own frustrations about my life onto you. I felt trapped by expectations I had created for myself, to have the perfect marriage, the perfect house, the perfect status. And when I couldn't maintain it all, it was easier to resent you than to examine my own choices. And now? Now I'm learning to live with less pressure. Ryan and I sold the big house and moved into a smaller apartment. He changed jobs for one that pays less but stresses him out less. We're learning to value different things. And Michael? Michael is better. It turns out that when his parents are less stressed and more present, he's happier too. She's quiet for a moment. "Mom?" He asks about you. He says he misses the grandma who made him meatballs. For the first time in months, I feel something akin to genuine affection for my older daughter. "What do you want from me, Jessica?" "I want a chance to get to know you as you are now, not as the mother I needed you to be. And I want you to get to know me as I am now, not as the daughter who disappointed you. That's going to take time. I know. And I don't expect you to change the will or anything like that. That's not what's important anymore. What is important then? That you give me a chance to be your daughter for real." We sit in silence for several minutes. Finally, I extend my hand to her. "One chance, Jessica. But the rules I established still stand. No trying to manipulate me. No treating me like an ATM. No expecting me to always be available for whatever you need. Understood. And if you want to rebuild our relationship, it's going to be as two adult women who respect each other. I'm not going back to being the mother who sacrifices everything for her children without getting anything in return. I wouldn't want you to." When Jessica leaves that afternoon, I think about second chances, about forgiveness, about the difference between being a loving mother and being a used mother. I've learned that you can love someone deeply and still refuse to be mistreated by them. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. That night, as I finish packing for the trip to Charleston, I write in the journal I started 3 months ago. Today, I understood something important. I didn't lose a daughter when I stood up to Jessica. I regained my dignity. And maybe, if she has really changed, we can build something new. But if not, I'll be okay anyway. For the first time in my life, I know that I will be okay on my own. And the next day, on the Amtrak train to Charleston, watching the Midwest landscape fly by the window, Megan asks me, "Are you happy, Mom?" "Yes," I reply without hesitation. For the first time in decades, I am genuinely happy. "What do you love most about your life now?" "That it's mine," I say, smiling. "Completely, authentically mine." I think of all the women who, like me, have spent decades living for others, sacrificing their identities on the altar of maternal or spousal love, believing that was their function in life. I think of all those who are still there, feeling guilty for wanting something for themselves, for being tired of giving without receiving, for wishing to be valued instead of tolerated. To those women, I want to say, it is never too late to choose to live your own life. It is never too late to set boundaries. It is never too late to decide that your happiness matters too. Love without respect is not love. It's disguised emotional dependency. And you deserve more than that. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not for what you can give. You deserve to be valued, not tolerated. You deserve to live your own life, not to exist to facilitate the lives of others. It took me 73 years to learn this. I hope it doesn't take you as long. Have you ever lived through a similar situation? Or do you know someone who has? Tell me about it in the comments. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes one story can change a life, and maybe the next life it changes will be yours.